Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Grace Murray. I'm the head of public programs at the Freer and Sackler Galleries, Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art. And on behalf of the museum, I'm delighted to welcome you to this meditation and mindfulness session today. And the meditation today will be led by Aparna Sadhananda. We are celebrating both Women's History Month, now that it's March, and also International Women's Day, which is coming up this Monday, March 8th. So we've chosen a work for you today that's a special reflection on the kinds of power that women hold. I think you'll enjoy this session. Aparna will lead us through the meditation practice, and then I'm actually going to be your spotlight speaker today. So I'm excited to share a little more about the artwork with you after our practice. So welcome, everyone, and enjoy the session.
Thank you so much, Grace, for starting our session today. And welcome, everybody, to this first art-based meditation in the month of March. And as Grace rightly noted, it's the Women's History Month. And today we're bringing you an artwork that celebrates the powers of women. So let me start by sharing with you an image of the artwork that we'll be focusing on today. And then we'll go into more of the nuances of our practice. And this is a great opportunity for all of us to adjust the screen of our device and make sure that you can hear me clearly, because all you need to do for this meditation is to be able to see the artwork and hear me clearly. So presenting to you Yogini, Chola Dynasty sculpture about 4 feet tall, carved out in stone, granite. And I just want us to take our first look at it and make any adjustments in preparation for our practice, for our close looking and meditation practice today. And for any reason, if you prefer to engage with the artwork on your own, then you could always click on the link that Yining has shared in the chat, and you can just be with the artwork on your own until we finish the meditation and then go back to Grace for the spotlight talk. So I'm going to pause the screen sharing here. And let's find a way of sitting comfortably, sitting in a way that the spine can be upright. And we'll start with a few moments of centering our attention. So maybe close your eyes, or you can always just lower the gaze and take a moment to attune to the presence that we hold in the space we're in. How's the body placed in space? Where is it supported? Maybe noticing what are the sensations through the body. Like through the body, we're holding a sacred space, a space that is sacred because of our attention, our life force being given to this space. And we could honor that space of intentional presence, embodied presence, by taking deep breaths in through the nose, deep breaths out through the mouth or the nose. And when we feel that we've arrived into our practice through our presence, We may open the eyes. And I would like to start today by sharing a little bit about the word yogini and what it means in the context of yoga. So, today in our yoga practices, we commonly use the word yogi to denote any practitioner of yoga. But in the strictest technical terms, a yogi or a yogini is someone who has mastered, who has attained a siddhi or an accomplishment, as the Yoga Sutras would call that. So, what is a siddhi and how does that happen? So, a siddhi is it's supposed to happen when we have mastery and the knowledge of the truth behind the subject of our attention. And to achieve that kind of mastery, where when one dives deep into that subject of attention, the subject releases its secrets. And in a way, to do this, the Yoga Sutras in the chapter 3 prescribe that it takes a combination of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Samadhi is that state where one feels oneness with the subject of attention, which happens when there is a deep state of meditation. And meditation is different from concentration in the fact that in concentration, we use different tools to bring our attention and keep it tethered. The mind wanders away, we bring it back to that tether, to that focal point. And at some point, this process becomes as smooth and easy, like pouring oil from one container to the other. And that becomes so deep that we lose a sense of I and become one, like merging with it. That is samadhi. And in deep samadhi, one can hope to accomplish samyama and through that, the siddhi or perfection. So the yogini who embodies not just beauty, but a powerful siddhi representing a certain energy, that is the subject of our meditation today. And I invite you to now take a closer look, just paying attention to the external form of the yogini. Notice her posture. And as you notice the posture, I invite you to start from the feet up. And here, may we all set a shared intention of practicing the yogic yama of brahmacharya or observing the world around as embodiment of light. Maybe start from her feet up, noticing her cross-legged posture, noticing the curves and the way her body is slightly swaying to her right. The full body, the ornaments, her neck and back upright and tall, but also balanced with a sense of ease. Her lips pursed and eyes closed. Like she is in a moment of deep meditation. Her matted hair flowing out. So even though there is all these symbols of being still, there's also an ethereal quality to her presence. Notice her having multiple arms, 4 arms here. The left hand holding something like a cup. And her right hand placed on the chest. And the rear arms holding something in their hands. And as we observe the form of the yogini, we might notice a lot of questions arising in the mind. But we can tell the mind with kindness, with compassion, that all of our curiosities will be answered. And this could be our moment to experience and engage with this art in a different perspective, in a way of mindfulness and meditation. And now let's embark on that journey of engaging with the yogini in a meditative way. Feel free to close your eyes or look away from the screen. So we can first deeply seat our attention in our body. And to do that, I invite you to bring awareness to the part of the body as I mention it. Just observe what's present in that part, and then we'll move our awareness to the next part and next part. No need to change anything. Maybe start by bringing awareness to the hands, the wrists, the forearms, the elbows, the upper arms, the armpits, the shoulders, chest, the waist, the upper back, the lower back, the hips and the feet, the thighs, knees, the shins and the calves, the ankles, the heels, the soles of the feet, tops of the feet, the toes, the neck, the jawline, the chin, the lips, the cheeks, the eyes, the eyebrows, the space between the eyebrows, the space between the eyebrows, the forehead, the right and the left temples, ears, the head, and the crown. Now let's take the time to integrate awareness of the whole body at once. Because we couldn't see or move the body, how do we know the body is here in space? What is that faculty that tells us presence of the body in space? And through that proprioceptive awareness, let's try to visualize ourselves, the body, just as it is in space. Liken this process to a camera viewing the body from the top of the room. Visualizing the outline of the body, then adding layers of attention, such as breath happening in the body, sensations manifesting in the body, and maybe even awareness of emotions and thoughts. All of these layers. Remember, the intention is not to change anything, but witness what is just as it is. And notice in all of these layers, this awareness that you are not just the body, you are not just the thoughts, just the emotions, not just the breath, but you are that conscious awareness, the light that is manifesting itself through these different layers. Moment to experience yourselves as an embodiment of light. And at that level of awareness, trust that you know everything, it is inherent. You're just awakening yourselves to that. Like in the words of the poet Rumi, you are not just a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. And through this meditation, the drop is becoming aware of its true nature. Now, coming back to the embodied form of that light through this body, breath, thoughts, emotions, and sensations, let's open the eyes to meditate again on the form of the yogini. And if you wish to, you may model her body language by sitting cross legged. You may place your right palm on the chest and having the left palm facing up and resting on the left thigh. And take a few breaths in this new shape of the body. And if it's more accessible, slowly start imagining a picture of the yogini. In your mind, you may visualize the yogini's image. So, in this conscious experience, the yogini is no longer just a sculpture, but an alive image in your mind. Now we'll enhance that image with more details by zooming into the image in front of our screen. Take your time to observe the details. Do not try to identify those details, but just observing the form, the shapes, the textures, the underlying intention of brahmacharya, intention of seeing the energy that is embodying, that is taking on this form. Now, maybe closing the eyes. Come back to that visualization, the yogini, now perhaps with a lot more details. And if that's a lot for your attention, you can also choose to focus on one part of the yogini and just meditate on the quality that she embodies there. Each time the mind wanders to another thought, let that point of attention be the tether. I'll practice that for about the next minute, trying to cultivate a space of dhyana or meditation from a space of dharana, concentration. And if you feel the need to, you can always open your eyes, look at her image, using this mindful looking as a tool of dharana, as a tool to reinforce the state of dhyana. We'll be there in silence for about a minute. I'll track the time while you explore your own meditative space. Your meditation be so deep that the difference between you and the yogini slowly begins to dissolve. Maybe a momentary experience of the yogini within you. And through that awareness, awakening to the realization that this body is a microcosmic representation of the macrocosm. All that which is present in the cosmos is also present in this embodiment, in this physical body, its pranic energy, the various forms it takes time to time. Slowly beginning to deepen the breath, but without changing our body's posture. Continuing in stillness, let's notice what are the qualities manifesting now in response to this practice. Whenever that feels complete, maybe join palms in prayer and honor the light that is speaking through this yogini sculpture, while also honoring the light within ourselves that enabled us to consciously experience the yogini's light. Silent namaste to the sculptors whose efforts gave us this beautiful work of art, as well as to all those teachers of yoga, the sages, the seers, whose teachings of yoga has helped us partake in its wisdom today. And finally, may we close by offering each other a namaste as a way of saying, the light in me honors the light in you. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming along with me in this journey of experiencing the yogini's power through meditation. I hope you found this useful. And in a moment, I would like to share in the chat some of the links to the resources that I may have spoken about or I had used in preparation to learn more about this yogini. We didn't go into deep examination of the artwork itself because I would like for Grace to take us into that intellectual journey now. So now it's over to you, Grace. And if you have any questions on yoga, on the yogic part of this meditation, please feel free to post that to chat. I'd be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aparna. Thank you, as always, for leading us through that experience. And we have the image again here. I want to talk a little bit about this artwork, but also hear a few of your thoughts and reactions. So I do want to pose a few questions, and I'd love for those of you who would like to respond in the chat. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts as we get started. This is a really beautiful artwork in the museum. It's usually on view in a corridor in the Sackler galleries where there's a skylight and there's light coming down on it. It's a beautiful work to walk past. So I'd like to imagine that we're in the museum now and we're walking down this corridor and we've just encountered this artwork, come face to face with it. It's on a raised platform and it's about 4 feet tall itself. So when we come up to it, it's almost life size as we're encountering it. You can imagine walking past and almost coming eye to eye with this sculpture. So I'd just like, and I noticed some people are already posting their thoughts in the chat. I'd just love to know what words you would use to describe this sculpture. Perhaps a word that captures the mood or the feeling of the piece. You can put any words that come to mind in the chat. I love some of these responses that people are sharing. Serene, kindness and grace, marvelous, peaceful, contemplative, inner strength, serenity, transcendence, centered, powerful, wisdom, dignity, poised, calm. So one person mentioned powerful. I'd just be interested to know if you do feel this figure is powerful, what elements that you see here are giving you a sense of its power? Any responses you have, any observations about the artwork, please share them in the chat. Is there anything about this work that you feel gives it a sense of power? Okay, someone says the posture. It's very erect, upright. Posture is strong. Serenity, even though there are multiple arms and there's a lot going on here, there's a sense of calm. The eyes are closed. So maybe a sense of wisdom. The balance and symmetry you see here, the sturdiness of the sculpture and its sense of being unmovable, sense of groundedness. Yeah, I think those are all things that give us the sense of power. Her hand over her heart. Yeah, that's sort of her own kind of sense of self and strength in her body. The way one hand is open. Sense of timelessness. Readiness. Next, I'd ask what thoughts or questions are coming to your mind about this artwork as you're observing it. Feel free to share any thoughts or questions that you have in the chat. How is that carved? Is that a snake below her feet? How old is it and who made it? Did it come from a cave? What are the objects she's holding? Why does she have elongated ears? Was it painted? Why 4 arms? Who owned this? Where has it been? What has it seen and heard? What religion does this represent? How did this artist invoke warmth through the otherwise cold surface? Is there a snake on her belly? Who was she in life? What does she have in her two back arms and why are they raised up? Was it commissioned? Is her gender relevant to the work? What is she thinking? Was it freestanding or created in a larger context? Where would she have been placed originally? What is the significance of her dress? Why was this sculpture made? Was she painted in color? These are incredible questions. Another one came in, are those bells on her ankle? Is she wearing clothes? Does she represent a particular goddess or a yogini? What is her age? Was she a prodigy or an apprentice? What happened to her nose? Why is her hair matted? These are wonderful observations and questions. I would like to answer some of them, and some of them perhaps I'll leave us to continue to ponder together after our session today. Adrian asked, did she have a twin or a partner? This is a depiction of a Hindu goddess called a Yogini, who is a female embodiment of yogic power. As Aparna said, it can also refer to a master practitioner of yoga. The goddess figure that you see here, she's seated cross-legged, and she's carved in high relief, which means she almost looks like she's coming out of this piece of stone into our three-dimensional space. She's wearing a tall crown, and her hair is loose behind her head. She's made out of granite, which is a very hard stone. It lasts a long time. It's very strong. She has beautifully arched eyebrows, and she's wearing jewelry. You can see her necklace, earrings, decorative armbands, a sash hanging down around her chest, and also bracelets and anklets on her wrists and ankles. She has 4 arms. 3 of her arms are holding objects, and 1 is placed across her chest. The objects she holds are a winnower, which is a basket-like apparatus that was used in agriculture. The sculpture is from India, from South India, the state of Tamil Nadu, from the Chola dynasty, the 10th century. So agricultural objects may have been more part of everyday life and more recognizable in that time and place than they may be to us today. So this, the object you see on the left, a winnower, is almost like a small oval-shaped basket that you would have used to toss grain, and then it would separate the grain from the chaff or the external covering of the grain. So it's something you would use in the process of preparing grain to use as food. In her other arm, she holds a small broom. You see that on the right. And in her hand on the right, you see a small bowl or cup. There's some animal imagery here. One of her earrings is in the shape of a crocodile, and one is in the shape of a cobra. It's a little hard to see, but the earring on the left is a cobra, and that's a little more clearly visible. And the earring on the right is the crocodile. If we go down to the bottom, to the pedestal below her, we can actually see a figure of a goose or a duck. That's carved in low relief. So as you can see, it's incised into the stone here. It's not coming out into 3 dimensions in the same way that the sculpture is. But this is this deity's vahana, or her vehicle or mount. So this goose or duck would have been the animal, the sort of magical animal that she could ride on. And as I said, this sculpture was created in South India in the 10th century, and it would have once been part of a temple that may have included a group of 64 similar yogini sculptures that would have been arranged in a circle around an open courtyard, and they each would have been set back in a niche. And this temple was thought to have been located near the city of Kanchi in the South Indian state of Tamil Nadu. You can imagine if there were 64 of these all in one space, how powerful that might seem. A yogini can have several meanings. It can refer to a female master practitioner of yoga or tantra, which is the esoteric traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism. It can also mean a female spiritual teacher in general, or a class of females with magical powers, or the sacred feminine force. And these yoginis were worshipped in specific temples in South India. I see someone ask, why 64? We don't know for sure, but there do seem to be yogini temples with different numbers of yoginis in them that can still be found. The yogini was a goddess who was worshipped for her ability to aid in attaining worldly power or success, and sometimes was worshipped by kings. And the yoginis can be both protective and friendly, as well as somewhat fierce and ferocious. And so we see some of that dual imagery and symbolism in this work. For example, she has a little bit of a gentle smile, her eyes are closed, her body is very full and graceful. So in some ways, she seems gentle or protective, or possibly an image of fertility. Yet also there are some things here that are a little bit more ferocious. For example, the cup in her hand is thought to be a skull cup, so made out of a human skull and used in ritual practices, perhaps to hold liquor or to hold blood. You can't really see it here, but she has tiny fangs in her mouth, and some of the other yogini sculptures have much more prominent fangs. So her hair, the curls coming out, can also be a symbol of female wrath, anger. It's powerful force. So to the question of how did the yogini come from its original place to the museum, a group of about 12 of these sculptures were discovered by a laborer in Tamil Nadu in the 1920s, and he notified a French archaeologist who was in that part of India at the time. The archaeologist was fascinated by the sculptures, and he ended up shipping most of them to Paris. Several of them stayed in India and are actually in a government museum now in Chennai. But a number of them were sent to Paris and then were bought by C.T. Liu, a Chinese national who was an art dealer in Paris and New York at that time. And they were moved by the dealer from Paris to New York and then were sold to a number of museums. And other yoginis from this series are located in a number of different American and European museums today. There's a fascinating book about this history and about the discovery and dispersal of the yogini sculptures by a scholar named Padma Kaimal. If you're interested in learning more, the information is on the object page on our website. But just to conclude, this sculpture is really sensuous, but also could be seen as a bit threatening or fierce. And the tools she holds in her hands may be ready to show care and protection or to attack and lash out. And in the original temple, when these yogini sculptures of which this is just one, when they were shown together, they each had different powers and attributes. And all together, they represented Shakti, or the primordial sort of cosmic energy, the creative force of the universe. So I hope that this was interesting and enlightening. I see Adrian asks, can all 12 be exhibited together? A few of them have actually been exhibited together at Freer Sackler in a past exhibition, and we have hopes to do that again in the future, to bring more of them back together in the museum or virtually. So stay tuned, and hopefully that will happen. But it would be incredible to see some of these sculptures reunited. Thanks so much for your thoughts and for participating today.
Thank you so much, Grace. That was wonderful. And I just wanted to add one more insight to that question of why 64. I went through a couple of talks, and I want to post the links here as well, in addition to the resource that Grace shared. So we spoke about siddhis, or accomplishments, these supernatural powers, right? And apparently, in a text called as the Mata Uttara Tantra, which is a very important tantric text in the context of yoginis, it speaks about Ashtasiddhis, or 8 siddhis. And it's interesting that there's a correspondence in that there are 8 siddhis and there are 64 yoginis who we don't know if they were like representative of 8 siddhis, but I just wanted to add that information. And the number 64 isn't constant. Like, there are many temples with these 64 siddhis, 64 yoginis, but also there is a mention of 108 yoginis. And I think in one of the talks by Deborah Diamond, she mentions the yogini culture in Bijapur, the Islamic kingdom, and there a tantric text was translated into Persian, and in that there is a mention of, I think, somewhere between 147 to 200 yoginis. So the number has also varied quite a lot. And if you're more curious about, knowledge of yoginis, or research on yogini temples and how their architecture is so dramatically different from the mainstream temples inside the towns, I'd like to post this link, some of the YouTube videos. One of them is by Vidya Dehejia, who's a professor at Columbia University, and her work is considered like the pioneering work in this field. And here's a link, so please do check it out. And I have 2 more links. One by our curator, Deborah Diamond. And here it is. And finally, another one about the yogini temples. So if you're interested, you can go to these links and find out more about yoginis. And thank you so much for coming along with us in this mindful and intellectual journey through yogini culture. It's interesting to look at yoga, a practice that we're also connected through from the perspective of women in yoga. So we hope you enjoyed our humble offering. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to post it to the chat. We'll try to get back to you as much as possible. And I think there was one question that I saw was probably a little related to yoga. So one question was, does she represent a particular goddess or yogini? In her talk, Vidya Dehejia says that the yoginis could be goddesses in their own right, but we could also look at them as aspects of Shakti, or the goddess Parvati. So in Tantra, Shiva is kind of the central god figure, and then his consort Parvati is the Shakti or the energy. And so we could look at the yoginis, the 64 yoginis, 108 yoginis as goddesses in their own right. And in fact, in the temple architecture, we'll see them surrounding the Shiva. There's no differentiation in terms of like putting one on pedestal. Everybody's in the same height. So suggesting that they are all equally important aspects of the god. But at the same time, they could be different forms of the goddess herself. She is manifesting through these 64 yoginis. And one more question was, how is it that if she's sitting curved, her spine can be upright? I think the curved imagery, especially with Chola sculptures, I think is also like an imagination of the artist. So often in his book on neuroscience, V.S. I'm forgetting the name. I'll find out. He's a doctor, and he says that the way the artist's mind would have calculated and constructed the sculpture is to imagine a feminine form, and then compare it with a masculine form and see what is the difference and exaggerate that difference. So I think the shape, the form that we see is also a product of that artistic imagination. I'm quite sure the yogini would sit upright with a nice tall spine and all the chakras stacked. So thank you for the questions. And
thank you everyone for joining us today, and thanks to Aparna for sharing those wonderful resources in the chat. Hope everyone has a great weekend.